The city had always been a mirror of shadows, a place where secrets seeped from the cracks in the pavement, hidden away in alleyways that yearned for the light. On this particular evening, however, the shadows grew thicker, the curtains of twilight dragging across the skyline like a cloak of morning. A dense fog rolled in, thick and heavy, dappling the streetlights with an eerie glow, creating halos that flickered through the steaming air. It was a fog that swallowed sound, muffling even the clatter of passing traffic, leaving only the soft, haunting breath of night. Detective Elena Rosa strode through the damp streets, her senses sharpened by the uncanny atmosphere. She had been chasing shadows for weeks now, investigating a string of disappearances that danced through the city like whispers on a ghostly breeze. Each missing person had crossed a threshold, a darkened doorway, an unlit alleyway, a forgotten street corner, never to return. As she approached the heart of the city, her gut twisted, warning her of something otherworldly lurking in the folds of the fog. She turned into an alleyway, a favorite of hers. It was a place where stories fledged past into inexplicable shadows. The cobblestones glistened under the weak light, glinting like stars lost in the void. And as she ventured deeper, the world outside began to blur, reality leaning to the surreal. It was there that she felt the presence of the fog, not just an atmospheric phenomenon, but a living entity vibrating with ancient whispers and memories dusted over with the passing years. Emerging from the haze, silhouettes began to take shape, figures shrouded in nothingness that moved with an unnatural fluidity. Elena stilled her breath and watched, heart racing as the figures meandered aimlessly, their eyes vacant, as if they were ghosts tethered to this dimension, forever lost. She had seen the missing people's photos countless times, but the faces of these figures were different, familiar in a way that twisted her stomach. They were the city's forgotten souls, swallowed by the fog and its dark promise. Her curiosity piqued. Elena crouched behind a dumpster, straining to catch fragments of whispered conversations. "They think it's just a myth," she heard one voice murmur, its tone a mixture of despair and revelation. "Feeding on the memories, their pasts, their regrets." Another echoed, a voice softer, almost melodic. "We must remember, or we will become them." It struck her like lightning. This wasn't just a supernatural occurrence. These figures were tied to the history of the city itself, to the very fabric of its existence. As the fog thickened around her, Elena made a mental note of the histories she had stumbled upon during her investigations. Each missing person shared a commonality, fleeting glances into a past they hadn't fully grasped, or secrets that clawed at their sanity. Were they drawn to something, a sinister force invoking their soul's essence to spiral into the shaded depths? With renewed resolve, she peered deeper into the fog, searching for answers as the figures began to swirl and dance. The police precinct had brushed off her theories as wild imaginings, but there was a darkness that lurked behind city lights, an ancient truth buried deep in the earth that had whispered to her since she first stepped foot on these streets. She felt the countless stories buried beneath layers of concrete, crying out for recognition. Suddenly, a jolt startled her. One of the figures, a man draped in an old trench coat, glanced in her direction, eyes glimmering with a recognition that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't mere aimlessness, these were reclaimers of lost memories and scattered tales, a hallowed congregation. She felt the urge to step forward, to confront this shivering mystery and to ask what they knew, but something held her back. Could she become one of them, merely an echo fading into ennui? She pressed her back against the damp brick wall, heart pounding as the man in the trench coat drifted closer, although he remained ensconced in the fog. Every instinct screamed at her to leave, to run into the safety of the familiar, but she couldn't. Curiosity had morphed into obsession. "Who are you?" Elena called out, her voice barely piercing the shroud that wrapped around them. Silence enveloped her, thick and palpable, before the figure smiled, a serene, knowing smile that sent ripples of fear cascading down her spine. "Those who forget their history are destined to walk these streets endlessly," he replied, voice captivated by the long-forgotten cadence of a world barely perceived. "We are those stories." The fog churned around him, revealing glimpses of images within scenes of lives lost and moments captured in breathless agony, fleeting images of murder, despair, and the pulse of life under the city's surface. "You seek the living among the lost. They did not vanish entirely. They have simply joined us, feeding the hunger of forgotten history. A sense of dread washed over her as she realized the implications. She was tangled in a web spun by the past, caught in a vortex of sorrow that threatened to consume her whole. Yet the detective in her burned like a flame, pushing her through the fog, trying to ascertain the truth hidden among the living memories. "Tell me," she urged, "how do I save them?" The figment remained calm. "The city has built walls, Elena. To navigate the fog is to tread the path of memory. Only through understanding and remembrance can one break the cycle. The secrets sewn into its very foundation must be revealed." With that, the figures around her began to sway as if caught in an invisible current, drawing Elena in with them. Against her better judgment, she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest as the fog danced with remnants of truths laid bare. She could sense echoes of the city's defined history, deeds buried deep, shrouded in years of neglect and sorrow. Faces and voices began to fit into the fog like puzzle pieces, illuminating the unspoken pain of lives extinguished too soon. She glimpsed the sorrow of a child long gone, a promise broken, and friendships severed by betrayal. Each was a thread woven into the city's intricate tapestry, each one a reminder that they were not simply echoes, they were integral parts of the city's heart. As she walked through them, the fog tightened around her, vibrating with the energy of the forgotten, and with each step, silhouettes transformed into memories, stretching to embrace her. She realized this was her moment, their chance to bear witness, and lend her voice to those who had been silenced by the passage of time. "I remember you," she whispered, finding solace in the face of one lost soul. "I remember your stories." A hush fell over the alley as Elena shared their histories aloud, each word a lifeline cast into the void. The fog shivered, and then, slowly, the figures began to dissolve, absorbing her remembrance, stealing it within themselves. She was reconnecting them to their purpose, offering them something they had long been denied acknowledgement. But with the burst of hope came a chilling realization. Her task was not just to recall these lost stories, it was to gather enough strength to invert their tragic legends, to share their lives with those still living before the shadows reclaimed her. She needed to spread the word, to advocate for those who could not advocate for themselves. And in that moment of clarity, Elena understood she would become their voice. A detective not just tracing the past, but shaping the narrative of the present. As she emerged from the fog, the figures faded into the night, a quiet assurance as the mist slowly began to retreat. The city remained cloaked in twilight, but she felt a flicker of light glow in the dark corners of her mind. With each story she would tell, she would unravel the forgotten history, giving life to all those lost. The fog may linger, imbued with shadows of the past, but she would be its reteller, ensuring no memory would remain hidden. The world may have swallowed the stories alive, but Elena Rosa, local detective, remembered. And that was the first step to reclaiming every lost soul in the entangled labyrinth of the city, where every alley whispered a history waiting to be told.